Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Out of the shadows came Andy Ruiz Jr. in June 2019, and he rocked the boxing world to its core, defeating Andthony Joshua to become a 3-belt heavyweight champion. Doesn't really get much better than that, and it's a movie waiting to be made. Now he has to avoid Joshua writing a redemption storyline in the rematch. This video is what you'd call the other side of the coin, as I did a video on Joshua along the same lines, and I'll make sure that that is up as the watch next video at the end of this one. I'll cover issues such as perception, rematch history, and the what next, because there is some interesting permutations with a Ruiz win here. So perception, we'll start off with that. It is a funny thing. Ahead of the first fight, Ruiz, although considered a good fighter, wasn't really given much of a chance of beating the champ. But he did, conclusively. Now he's the one. He comes into this rematch with confidence, knowing he can hurt Joshua, and as Ruiz says, make him quit. A lot of fan sentiment leans towards Ruiz being able to win the rematch, and again by a stoppage, although the bookies, they aren't necessarily reflecting that in odds that you can find available around the place for the fight. But Ruiz, he's now perceived by some, more than any time in his career, as an extremely dangerous fighter. He's always been good, but some are now saying that he's just unbeatable, that Joshua can't beat him. Time will only tell on that score, but Ruiz and his team, they won't be underestimating Joshua and the threat that he poses. It is far from a mismatch. Don't believe that it is a mismatch. This will be a competitive fight. Even if there's a knockout, it is going to go some rounds and it's likely to be tough. Whoever wins will deserve the victory. If anything, Ruiz coming into this fight, he's going to have to actively guard against complacency. And that's something that Andthony Joshua's trainer, Rob McCracken, he said they were a little guilty of complacency ahead of the first fight. And Ruiz, he certainly flew under the radar for that first fight during fight week, holding Joshua's belt, giving off an air of that he was happy to be here, that sort of vibe. Ruiz played the man. He lulled Joshua into a false sense of security. But he won't get that chance again. That's not going to be there. Joshua and his team, eyes wide open. Ruiz says he knows what the tactics will be from Joshua. Joshua will try to box, use his height, his reach, fight more conservatively, and even Joshua's trainer in an interview in Saudi Arabia, he's confirmed that sort of high-level game plan. He wants Joshua, stressing that Joshua must stick to the tactics that they set. And I guess in terms of the rematch and the strategy, it's always been quite clear what they potentially will look to do, but whether Joshua can do it is another story. But as Joshua adapts for the rematch, so too will Ruiz. And if he does win, be it by decision or a stoppage, and he has spoken about maybe being able to stop Joshua again, but faster, perceptions of Ruiz Jr. will shift and solidify. Right now, he's built up a big fan base in recent months because of his June heroics, and that flock will only grow if he's victorious. There's also other fans who do recognize him as a good fighter, but maybe they're not necessarily fans. They're waiting for the rematch to see how it plays out, to see if he's truly legit. And sort of on the flip side of that, I've seen similar commentary related to Joshua. Some fans are on the fence about Joshua's chances of winning because they believe Ruiz may just have his number. He may just be that good that Joshua cannot beat him. And that's what Ruiz wants to prove. He stated the persistent doubt from some fans. It motivates him. He uses it. He's been using it in training camp. He wants to put an exclamation point on his December 7th performance, prove it wasn't some sort of fluke or a one-off win, etc. It is legacy defining after all, and he will remove all doubt with a win. And I know some people are adamant Joshua, he's got no chance. Ruiz has his number. And yet, sometimes that does happen. Fighters are tailor-made for other fighters to beat. We are soon going to see if that's the case in this case. But what does history show us about immediate rematches in the heavyweight division? Per a piece on boxingscene.com, which covers that very topic much more in depth than I'm going to cover it, there have been 10 immediate rematches, with the champion winning 5 of those, that's the new champion, losing 3, and drawing twice. So you cobble the wins and the draws together, 70% of the time, the new champion has kept his title in the immediate return fight. That's significant, but obviously in 3 of those 10 rematches, the losing champion regained their champion status. And Ruiz, he won't want to let Joshua become number 4. And judging by preparations, Ruiz is leaving no stone unturned. He's prepared for a tough fight, a fight that may go several rounds, if not the distance, and hence his stated desire to come in a bit lighter for the rematch. He may need that extra cardio to be in better condition if it goes into the later rounds. He won't want to fatigue and tire and give Joshua an opportunity if he's still in the fight. But will his game plan wear Anthony Joshua down? Can he get the win? And what if he does win? The what next for me is quite fascinating. He'd have the 3 belts and 2 mandatory challengers waiting for their title shot. In the WBO, the challenger is Alexander Usyk, and in the IBF, it's Kubrat Pulev. The IBF has already ruled Pulev must get his shot before the end of May 2020. So what does he do if he is forced into a position to drop a title? With the IBF, it is due, and the WBO, what if they call their mandatory? Certainly a lot has been discussed in recent weeks through the media about the possibility of a belt being dropped. And I know some like to say Ruiz will walk straight into a fight with Wilder for undisputed, but given that Wilder is going to be facing Fury in February 2020, it's unrealistic, and Pulev would need to have a shot before the end of May anyway. And just to cut off the whole undisputed Trump's mandatory blanket statement that some like to use, the clock is already ticking on the IBF ruling, and there is no leeway. They will just strip him if he decides to walk into another fight that's not the Kubrat Pulev fight. But in the unlikely event Wilder ditches the Fury fight to face Ruiz, it would be unlikely to be for all the titles, given the whole IBF situation as I've outlined. Realistically, if Ruiz wins and Wilder wins in February, the earliest that they're likely to fight is in the second half of 2020. If Fury beats Wilder, there'd be a trilogy fight. So a Ruiz-Wilder fight probably wouldn't happen next year. But of these belts and who to face, if he can't avoid dropping a title, for me, the obvious one to vacate, to ditch, would be the IBF. And think about it like this for a second. He's in the PBC stable. He is advised by Al Heyman. Al Heyman is likely to want a dropped belt to be available for one of his fighters to contest. And of the 2, WBO and IBF, Adam Kovnatsky is number 3 in the IBF. He would be in line to face Kubrat Pulev under that scenario. If he dropped the WBO, it would likely be contested by 2 Matchroom promoted fighters, Alexander Usyk and Joseph Parker, and that's going by the current rankings with Parker at 4th. Ideally, you wouldn't want any belts to be vacated, but with no mandatories completed since 2018, they just need to be fulfilled. There might be no getting away from it. And if he keeps the WBO, he'd be fighting Alexander Usyk, and that would be a very good fight. And Ruiz Jr., his pressure, his speed would be interesting weapons in that fight. But talking about that one more in depth would be for another day. Let's get December 7th out of the way and see what happens. Will Ruiz win? Let me know. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.